Good morning, man. Congratulations. It's a great honor to be a pro football player, man. But I do encourage you guys to understand the reality. We're a very young football team. We got 12 rookies that made this team. You know, we have assembled an interesting group of guys that love football. Is there anybody in here that doesn't love what they're doing? I want you young guys to take advantage of that. That's the best way you can fast track your career, is by studying the guys that have done it for a while and done it well. Are we clear on that?
And then there were 53. The Week 1 roster for the Oakland Raiders is officially set. Hard Knocks with the Oakland Raiders is officially done. And I am your host, Peter Schrager, with another episode of the Hard Knocks podcast. It's the finale. Knock on wood if you're with me. 12 rookies made the team. That meant a lot of veteran players that we have gotten to know did not. And on Tuesday's episode, we got Coach listening to Metallica on his morning drive. We got a Raiders fan giving a big shout out to Jason Cabinda's mother. And we got the requisite Antonio Brown workout montage, this time in a pool that has now become a weekly staple of Hard Knocks training camp with the Oakland Raiders. But we also got the harsh reality that not everybody makes it in the NFL. Today I'm joined by Ken Rogers, who is the senior coordinating producer on Hard Knocks at NFL Films. We went deep on not just this season, but the entire Hard Knocks production as a whole. I wanted to know about the relationship with not only the NFL, but with the Raiders and with HBO Sports as well. And after that, I've got my MVP of the season and what I'm looking for with the Oakland Raiders moving forward in 2019. But first, we have to get to the cuts. The 72 hours between the Thursday evening of the final preseason game and the Sunday evening of Labor Day weekend are often the most active, wildest, and quite honestly, most confusing time of the NFL season. Timeline-wise, let me explain. Let's start with Thursday evening. You've got your final preseason game. You finish that up. And the coaches and front office guys, they don't get to enjoy Labor Day barbecues or long 3-day weekends at the beach. They're back to work right away, trying to figure out how to cut their teams down from 90 men to 53. On Friday, the cuts begin, and there's great debate. Coaches fighting for their guys at their position groups, and tough life-changing decisions are made. Those discussions, though, bleed all day and all night into Saturday, because by Saturday of Labor Day weekend at 4 p.m. Eastern, the final roster, all 32 teams across the league, needs to be set. All cuts have to be made official, and your roster needs to be submitted to the NFL by that deadline. This is when things get hectic. Teams have a day to scramble and look at their rosters and make deals to pick up any players that have been cut and add them to their teams. Now, of course, in many of these cases, they've just told young players, you've made the 53. But on Sunday, if there's someone they like more, they can add that player and tell that same guy who made it yesterday, sorry, you haven't made the 53 after all. And this is when young players and guys of all ages have to make big decisions of their own. They're getting calls from multiple teams, and if you're not getting those calls and no one has picked you up, you can try to join the original team that's already cut you on something called the practice squad. Or you can roll the dice and try to join another team's practice squad if you think you've got a better shot at making that team's 53-man roster as the season goes on. And when it comes to professional sports, skill is all relative. Keep in mind, these are probably the best players ever to come out of their respective high schools. They are the best of the best. But after that final preseason game on Thursday night, a lot of them may never step foot on an NFL field again. And by Sunday evening of Labor Day weekend, usually there are over 2,000 different player transactions in the NFL, which leads us to Jason Cabinda. We got to know Jason and his mother in episode 4 when they were up in Winnipeg. The Hard Knocks cameras really focused in on him the final 2 episodes, and the linebacker looked awesome. He was flying around the field in that preseason game and tremendous in practice. And yet, in the moment of truth on cut weekend, things didn't quite go as he or his mother would have hoped.
You worked your ass off. You did everything I asked you to do. You learned the defense. You drove the bus. And really, honestly, I'm just going to be very honest with you, when it came down to special teams. That's just the way it is.
I think that's where I felt most disappointed, because I felt like I improved a lot on special teams. I genuinely feel like that was a goal of mine this year, was to improve there.
You may be pissed about how it worked out, and I understand that. But at the same time, just keep your head up, reset your mind, get back in the channel, keep working, and you never know what happens. However this thing shakes out, like obviously if another team calls you, I'll be the first one. If anybody calls me, if your agent's saying, hey, this team's looking at me, please have those coaches call me, and I'll give you an A++ recommendation, okay?
I appreciate it.
All right, man. Appreciate you, man.
So that's the conversation. He doesn't make the Raiders 53. And you're wondering, so what happens to Cabinda? Well, on Monday, the Detroit Lions announced that they had signed free agent linebacker Jason Cabinda to their practice squad, and they had to release another player to add him. Keelan Doss, the young wide receiver who was a local high school legend, was another guy we focused in on all season. Guess what? He didn't make the 53-man roster either, but he ended up signing with the Jacksonville Jaguars in their practice squad. And then there's the case of Luke Wilson. We went on a boat ride with him. We met his father. We went up to his native land of Canada, and we joked and loved it. We were invested in Luke Wilson. He played in the league for 6 years. He's played in 2 Super Bowls. And he doesn't make the 53-man roster. Even more interesting, as of this recording, he's currently unsigned. And those are just a few of the guys we won't be seeing in Oakland this year. That's the NFL. That's Hard Knocks. And the person in charge of the crew who brings us Hard Knocks is our guest today. His name is Ken Rogers, and he's the senior coordinating producer of Hard Knocks at NFL Films. Ken Rogers on the line. And Ken, you joined us back in the second week of Hard Knocks after episode 2, and it was the second week of the preseason. I'm so thrilled to have you now after the season is completed. Thank you for coming back on the show. I have to feel like you're on the beach somewhere smoking a cigar and having a drink.
That would be very nice. In my mind, I am. In my mind, I'm on a beach. In reality, well, I'm still at NFL Films.
We know you're on to the next project, but before doing that, let's look at this one, because I thought it was excellent. I thought you guys got Gruden. I thought you handled Antonio Brown better than anyone else in the media handled Antonio Brown the past 6 weeks, even though now it looks like that has been put to rest. At the time, that was the biggest story in sports, and Hard Knocks was the only set of cameras that had real access into everything. When you look back on all these years of Hard Knocks, what's the takeaways from this one?
The takeaway really does come down to how different every season feels. We, every year, sort of think about replicating previous year's successes. And then as soon as we start, we realize, well, this is a completely different show. And that was the case with Coach Gruden. It just has a different feel. The camp has a different feel. It didn't feel like Cleveland right away. And you sort of have to figure out what it's about. And I think in the last few episodes, we've discovered that the voice of this team is John Gruden, which we sort of knew, but we were exploring the fringes of that. But more and more as the weeks went on, we discovered that the core material that spoke to what was going on this week was coming not from players, not from anywhere in the front office. This is John Gruden's team. It's almost his identity, like our identity can be our shows. He, right now, represents the Oakland Raiders so strongly that the easiest thing to do is just to let him speak for the team. And we just found ourselves increasingly attracted to whatever he was saying, which, again, is natural, but going with our strength and saying, let's not try to push other storylines. The real story here is that this is a team steered and captained by one guy. Let's go all in with him. And it worked out, I think, great.
You know, it's interesting with this team in particular, because a lot of times we carry the narrative of certain players through 5 episodes, and a lot of times it's a guy that's considered a relative long shot, yet within the building, and maybe your producers or your guys have been tipped off, this guy's got a real shot of making it. And that climactic scene in episode 5, he's going to make it, and it's going to be this great feeling. And yet, Luke Wilson, Keelan Doss, a couple of these guys that we really rode this wave with didn't make the team, which led to almost disappointment, I think, for the viewer who was riding with Luke Wilson and Keelan Doss. You guys really had no idea if they were making it or not, huh?
No, well, I don't think the team did, so we certainly couldn't. I think certainly Keelan Doss and Jason Kabinda came down to the line, and we really didn't foresee Brandon Marshall being released by the team. Luke Wilson we knew was a 50-50 proposition, and Nate Peterman, he had a clear storyline, but we do follow these players that we start to feel like, it seems like this guy's going to make it. And we did feel that way with Keelan Doss and Jason Kabinda, but we've been around long enough to know that we don't know anything about football. What we know how to do is make TV shows. And sometimes those guys that are right near the line get the most attention from a coach or from a staff or from a quarterback in a game. You see how Keelan Doss was just targeted over and over again. And in retrospect, you realize that's to see whether he can cross that line into the 53 or not. So sometimes the people right around that line seem like they're the focus of camp because coaches have already decided on everyone else. So we try to pick those people in the middle. We call them bubble guys. That's what they are in this industry. And they're really on the bubble as to which way they're going to go. And that's always produced a lot of drama because everyone cares on the team what they're doing. Jason Kabinda, Keelan Doss, Brandon Marshall, Luke Wilson, those guys, the last week really meant something for them. If we had picked Derek Carr to follow in week 5, well, he was sitting at home.
Yeah.
He wasn't even in Seattle. So how are we going to tell that story of how week 5 affects him? Week 5 is pretty much a bye week for a lot of the starters. So that's why we follow those guys over 5 episodes. And Jason Kabinda and Keelan Doss, we weren't surprised at all that they got picked up by the Lions and Jaguars because we could tell they were right on the line of making this team or not making the team.
A couple more questions for me on this season in particular, and you tell me if I'm overstepping my bounds and asking, but the Las Vegas storyline I thought would be a huge one. The fact that this team is uprooting from Oakland and going to a new city, barely mentioned other than just kind of passing, but there was no site visit to Las Vegas really in the first 4 episodes, and there was no naming rights announcement. There was none of that. Was that by design to kind of protect the fans of Oakland, or was that just not a major story in camp this year?
That's a good question and a fair question, but the truth is it's not part of the football story at all. If we had done Hard Knocks training camp with the Oakland Raiders marketing department,
that's fair.
I guarantee you we'd be in Vegas the whole time.
Do the Raiders push back on you, Ken, and say, hey, guys, we're giving you access. Can you at least give us a little pop here? We just got a new naming rights partner. Can we mention it? Or it's not even, there's a church and state here.
The sales team is not going to make interesting television. Trying to sell the suites is not really going to make interesting television. I think they realize that the more we make fans care about the team, the better the business side of things will do. But to try to make an infomercial is just not going to work.
Because when I saw the Raiders, I said, okay, there's a couple things at play here. There's Gruden, there's Antonio Brown, and there's Vegas. And this Vegas storyline of, I could already see Liev Schreiber talking about in Las Vegas, and there was none of it.
No. And really, we put it in context at the end of the series to let you know, like, hey, here's the future. This is where they're headed. But right now, really, for these players, all that matters is right now. And it's interesting that this team with so much history and the legacy of Al Davis and his office still sitting there, which is an amazing fact to me, and that they're building a new stadium, that in the football operations of this team, none of that matters. It's like this overarching context that you would think is taking up all the oxygen in the room when it comes to this franchise. But football players, football coaches, all they care about is football. You could put them on a high school field and they would only care about football.
Yeah, and a lot of these players and coaches would play on an 80-yard field in Winnipeg if they had to also, and they did.
They might complain about it, but
they
yeah,
might
they will
complain,
do it.
but they'll play. The other 2 guys that I was waiting for that didn't really have that moment of profile, I know he went the first episode mentioned Incognito, but Burfict and Incognito are fascinating to me, and it feels like you guys didn't do the deep dive treatment on them by design, or just wasn't really a major storyline for you guys.
We were camped out waiting for
something, right?
Oh yeah, this is going to be a conversation. This is going to be a great heart to heart. This is going to be, and it didn't happen. I mean, when people are on the same team, they're on the same team, and the past is the past. I think there's so much turnover in the National Football League that players are used to having their enemies become friends and their friends become enemies on the football field. And that includes hard hits and bad calls and game-winning touchdowns. I think all is forgiven in the NFL when you join a brotherhood each August, and all is forgiven.
Yeah, and I think for the listeners, what I'm referring to is in a playoff game, Vontaze Burfict nearly took off Antonio Brown's head with a vicious hit. It led to a full-on brawl between the Bengals and the Steelers, and now they're teammates in Oakland, and I think we all are waiting for this, either addressing it or conflict or kumbaya. But like you're saying, Ken, the third episode, the two of them are giggling together on the sideline.
Yeah, and football camps in general, like the NFL as a whole, are evolving, and coaches used to pit offense versus defense in such a way that it would bring out anger. It would bring out a sort of antagonism to rile players up. But I think everyone's realized these guys are such professionals that they know when to turn it on in the football games. They know when to, really show their aggression. And practice isn't the time to do it. We saw it in episode 1 with Coach Gruden talking to Jonathan Abram, the rookie, of, hey, calm down. Like, not here. Save that for the game. Save that for the guys that aren't on your team. It's no longer defense versus offense in training camp as much as it used to be. And we've seen a huge change over the course of the history of this series. And it's now very much like, hey, we're going to bring out the best competition in each other, but we're no longer pitted against each other. It doesn't matter whether our squad wins or your squad wins. What matters is this team as a whole wins. And the Raiders really showed that. There was no tension this year between offense and defense whatsoever.
I look towards the future now, and with the Raiders, it seemed like it was the perfect setup for you guys. And I don't know how you got there, how the sausage was made, but whatever it was, the Raiders became the Hard Knocks team, because in the months leading up, there was a comment from Mark Davis, the owner, saying, we might have to fire Gruden and rehire him, so we're ineligible. Like, they didn't want it. Then we look forward. Is it, to you, already a thought in September of 2019 to know what team is going to be selected for Hard Knocks in July of 2020? Like, when do you guys start already moving it forward and saying, all right, this team's got intriguing storylines and fits the criterion?
Well, there's personal curiosity, but there's certainly no professional movement at the moment. So much will change, and we've been doing this long enough to know not to count our chickens. So I'm anxious personally, and I play a little guessing game of like, oh, well, let's go around, and I can find reasons why we would want to do every team in the league. Every single one is interesting to me. I'm tired of Hard Knocks at the moment because it's been 40-some straight days of work for our crew, and they've all done an incredible job. But at the same time, I know I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning and start thinking about Hard Knocks 2020.
Yep. Couple questions to wrap it up, and just how many staff members are assigned to Hard Knocks each season? And I want to know, how do you go about placing those cameras, and how many cameras are we using for a season?
This is the biggest production we do at NFL Films on a yearly basis. Steve Sable always called it the Super Bowl before the season, which explains why we're all so tired, and yet the season hasn't even started. There's over 120 or so people that work on the show each week.
Is that right? 120 people. How many in the actual building, and how many back in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, working on the post-product?
So there's about 40 people in general, 32 to 40 depending on the days out with the team. And then there's about 30 to 40 creative staff that are working on the post-production and editing at any time. That 120 people, you think, wow, that's a lot of people making decisions. It's actually a well-oiled machine of partnership. You don't have time to not trust other people. You have to look at those other 119 people and say, well, I believe that they're going to do their job correctly, and I'm just going to not let them down and do my job correctly, and it'll all work out. And it really is just an incredible team to be part of. And I know everyone here, when we get done, sort of looks at each other like there's some sort of connection there that'll always be there, the same way players feel after a championship season. You sort of look at each other and say, I'm going to always remember this, and this was fun.
And when does Schreiber get those scripts every week? I mean, I feel like the show is on the air and we have footage from, up to the minute, and he's got a beautifully written script and delivers it wonderfully.
Yeah, it's about 12 to 14 hours before we air. We voice with Liev. He's usually shooting a movie or a television series or...
Is that right? Like he'll be filming Ray Donovan and he'll come in for an hour and get to a studio?
Yeah. Our turnaround is such that we can't record 2 months earlier and say, oh, good, thanks for recording that. We'll put it in later. We only know what the script is going to be 24 hours before it airs. So that gives us 12 hours to work on it, and then we record it, and that gives us 12 more hours to get it into the show and mix it and feed it and get it out to HBO. So he's been an incredible partner in understanding that timeline and making sure that whatever commitments he has outside of Hard Knocks, he still delivers. And you can hear him transform as he gets the script and says good morning and gets his coffee ready, and then all of a sudden he turns into the Hard Knocks narrator and you get chills.
My last question, and you've been great to give us all this time. There's this amazing clip at the end of the finale, and it's a clip from 2008 where John Gruden mentions he might want to work for HBO one day.
You know what? You guys...
I can't wait for him to be an on-air commentator, color commentator.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to HBO. They're going to let me on HBO where I can use foul work, that son of a bitch. He missed that call. Look at that damn referee down there. Don't you think they should do that?
How did your team find that clip? Did you save it? Did you sandbag it for the final episode? Like, how did you find that? And what a gem to find, 11 years later to roll out on Hard Knocks.
Such an incredible moment. And it's a testament to the NFL Films legacy and archives. And coaches sometimes ask, why do you have to wire me every year? And why do I have to do this in training camp? And that's the perfect example. That was discovered as we were looking through training camp footage to see if we could find Coach Sean McVay working for Coach Gruden back in episode 2. So the Rams came to town and we said, you know what? This guy used to work for Coach Gruden. Let's look through all the footage. And we found this incredible clip of McVay and Gruden, a very young McVay, getting advice from John Gruden in Tampa. But we also found this clip of him predicting that he would work for HBO, though he's not working for HBO on this show, certainly becoming a star on HBO. And we just knew, okay, this feels like the last thing you see in the series this year. Is all of this was meant to be. It wasn't a case of, Gruden being anything other than himself. But when you see it 11 years later, you realize, this always had to happen. Hard Knocks had to have John Gruden on one of these years. And I knew it would happen as soon as I knew he was coming back to coach, because before Steve Sabol passed away, he would always say, boy, if Gruden ever comes back into coaching, we have to get him on Hard Knocks. And we all knew, it would be perfect. And Steve just kept preaching that, like, we need to get Gruden back on the sideline. We need to get him back. And when he left the booth and came back, Steve's been gone for a few years now, but I sort of looked up and said, well, we're going to get him, boss. We're going to get him. And it didn't take long. It took the second year, and it paid off. We knew exactly what we were going to get because he's just such a great guy and such a great coach and great personality. And he makes everyone in the NFL proud to work for the Shield.
Wow. That's a beautiful way to end it. And 5 hours of incredible footage, condensed into those 5 hours. And what a tribute to your late boss, Steve Sabol, and what a tribute to you, Ken. Fantastic season. And from everyone watching and from us here at the podcast, thanks so much for all the work you guys do as a team and you personally for spearheading this whole project.
And thank you. I can't wait to hear the podcast again next year for Hard Knocks training camp with the ...
Awesome stuff, Ken. Thank you. Every week on the Hard Knocks podcast, I've picked my MVP of the episode. But with the final episode now in the books, I'm going to give my MVP of the season. And this one's a no-brainer. It's Jon Gruden. I've covered Gruden as a journalist. I've met him a few times when he was the voice of Monday Night Football, and I've been watching him for about 20 years. I got to be honest, I thought I knew basically what I needed to know and got the gist of Jon Gruden even before Hard Knocks began. Football guy, blah, 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 loves the sport. We've heard it. I'll tell you what, though. I didn't know Jon Gruden at all. And through 5 hours of All Access TV, we got to see a coach who's 100% committed to his players. He had Antonio Brown's back from the start of the foot troubles right through the absurd helmet saga. He was pulling for Nathan Peterman when it seemed like the rest of the NFL was snickering from afar. And when the final roster came to be, he went with 12 rookies, guys who he had real faith in, over perhaps the safer option of siding with veterans who have been there and done that. More than anything, though, I saw an authentic person. Yes, he's got a slew of endorsements and has been a fixture in pop culture for years, but Jon Gruden is no caricature. He's the real deal. And if there's one shining star from this season of Hard Knocks, it's him. So one last time, for the hell of it, knock on wood if you're with me. All season long, I've given you something to track for the next episode. Well, here's my final thoughts on the Hard Knocks season as a whole and what to watch if you're tracking the Raiders this season. As I mentioned to Ken Rogers, I think it's a huge deal and one that was barely covered by the show that the Oakland Raiders are moving to Las Vegas. The Raiders are one of the crown jewel franchises of the NFL, and they're moving to a city that's never had an NFL team before. And Vegas, of all places. I mean, Vegas is the wild, wild west for the NFL. The nightlife, the world of gambling, all of that. It's fascinating to me. And when you're uprooting an entire team, it's not just the players, but it's the business side of it all, too. Hundreds of men and women and their families as well. And oh yeah, you happen to also be leaving behind an entire city that loves their sports team. This can get ugly, and for many, it's an emotional separation. I would think that the move to Las Vegas, which will not happen overnight, is something worth tracking as the season goes on. The other subject that I'll be watching is the quarterback of the team, Derek Carr. Carr's entering his 6th NFL season this year. He's the highest paid player on the team, and he's really the most important piece to the success of the 2019 Oakland Raiders. There also happens to be a great young crop of quarterbacks in college who will be entering the NFL draft, which, by the way, happens to be taking place in Las Vegas next April. Look, the jury is still out on Derek Carr, and after 5 episodes of all-access coverage on HBO, I still have no better feel for him as a leader of men than I did before the series. Is Derek Carr the man? I need to know, is Derek Carr the guy in that building? Because Tom Brady is the man in New England. Drew Brees is the man in New Orleans. And even Cleveland Browns second-year quarterback Baker Mayfield is undoubtedly the man in Cleveland. Or is Derek Carr in a prove-it year with the Oakland, soon-to-be Las Vegas Raiders? The biggest season of Derek Carr's career starts in a few days. I will be watching. And that's it for this season of the Hard Knocks podcast. This show was produced by HBO Sports, NFL Films, and Pineapple Street Media. Our team at HBO includes executive producer Peter Nelson and producers Michael Gluckstad and Matt Draper. Our Pineapple Street Media team includes executive producers Jenna Weiss-Berman, Max Linsky, and the incredible Barry Finkel, along with producers Elliot Adler and Justine Daum. We also got production help from Kat Aaron, Henry Malofsky, and Natalie Brennan, an awesome team that I have been thrilled to work with. I'm your host, Peter Schrager. Have thoughts on this show or any of the other previous episodes? You can tweet me at pschrags. That's PSCHRAGS. I would love to hear from you. For more Hard Knocks content throughout the season, check out the Hard Knocks Instagram page at Hard Knocks HBO. And as always, you can find the Hard Knocks podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thank you to everyone who listened and gave feedback on the show. Hey, happy football season.